Hey guys, huge day for tomorrow for Nio Stock. What's going on with Nio Stock? What you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about the overall market, what you should be watching for, as tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have the big reaction that's going to be coming to Google and Microsoft's earnings, alongside some very big news involving the FOMC meeting and Jerome Powell speaking. So I'm going to break down how this may affect the whole market with the news data and technicals are telling us about Nio. We had a very interesting day. Another pop then drop as the day went on. It still managed to close green, still trying to hold up. But I do want to warn everyone that we do have some big news coming out that could slow the market down possibly. And you always need to be prepared for this in my opinion. Now why is that? Let's start off with the earnings. So far with earnings, Microsoft actually is just waiting for guidance. But overall, they managed to beat overall, and they did quite well. Google is also up quite nicely, once again doing quite well as well. But Snap is down quite a bit from the last time I checked. So we're going to be watching all of these very carefully so far. Now for tomorrow, we have AT&T, Boeing, Coca-Cola, and a couple of others in the morning. Then after that we have Meta, and Chipotle Meta is going to be the biggest one of the day for tomorrow. And in between the times, the earnings come out before and after the market closes intraday tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the interest rate hike decision coming out. And then at 2:30 p.m., we have the FOMC conference. Those are two separate things. This is going to be very impactful for the whole market, so make sure you're ready for this. This is going to cause either a big move to the upside or the downside, so you have to be ready. As far as Nio goes, we had some bullish news that came out, which is part of why Nio was just performing so well. Nio's insurance registrations were up about at around 4,700 as of the 23 July. And that was just for the week, right? Just for the week ending for July 23. What's so bullish about this is the fact that Nio is continuing to just give us better and better numbers. If they manage to maintain that for a very long period of time, they could do pretty good numbers getting close and well above their previous records. Nio get very close to around 15,000 deliveries if they keep up numbers like this at the very least. It could even be much higher than that, 16,000, 18,000, something like that is very possible. And I think this is very bullish news for next week. So even if Nio does drop a little bit with the market, even if that happens, I'm still completely fine with it because I think Nio has some potential to explode next week if they announce some very strong deliveries. I'm going to be very excited approaching that. Now for now in the market's part of why I was talking about some potential downsides because we're starting to discuss some troubles amidst some of the regional banks. We actually saw PacWest being potentially bought up by the Bank of California, and they're doing this because of troubles that were discussed for more of these regional banks now. Is it the end of the world? Not necessarily. It's not super horrible or super serious. But we did discuss the KRE and just a couple of other those ETFs potentially good for downside. So it was just important to note as far as Nio goes, people are now very excited about it. We're getting more buy ratings from like Zacks and many others out there. And we're continuing to discuss a good performance moving forward. Some more expectations that Nio was going to continue to uptrend with higher projections than before. Zacks has come out and they're talking about their projections for the full earnings. And they mentioned that in the current expectations they are anticipating that not the strongest earnings moving forward for Nio, but they still have some very strong positions for the longer term and they're still very bullish as they're trying to once again talk about Nio. They mentioned that the 12-month EPS is projected to once again grow, and they believe it's going to be very good for them. They also mentioned that there's potential good amounts of improvements to come to their overall sales, and they're still quite excited about it. Their valuation right over here, they're actually discussed the based off their PE ratio and factors like that. And they're saying that even though Nio may not have the best rating right now, they believe the bottom line is still more for the longer-term future when they still believe that Nio has some good potential for that reason. So that's just their take on it in the very recent days. This is part of why Nio was holding up. We also got some very good numbers which helped Nio for the last 2 days with 100+ million in volume holding up quite nicely. the short volume overall is still not that bad. Short volume relative to price is currently only at about like 33% because there's a lot of buying pressure that's really making up that volume. The price-press ratio is going up. That's good as Nio is getting relative strength. JP Morgan announced that they're neutral on Nio. And Nio, when it comes to this data, it doesn't really matter as much because tomorrow is the FOMC meeting. But going into the longer term, I'm still very, very bullish as we're seeing the short interest declining. Now let's talk about the technicals. How are things looking for Nio? Unfortunately, from a technical standpoint, Nio was looking kind of weak because we have a bearish cross on the 1-hour PPO and we started to decline. We got a very nice pop. Then we declined a bit, which is completely normal. What worries me is there could be like a head and shoulders forming on it. Maybe we pump a little bit more to form a right shoulder, then we start dropping a bit because of the FOMC meeting. There's also this imbalance down here around this like 10.8 level. We could discuss the Nio come down with the market temporarily. It's just a possibility because don't forget we have Jerome Powell speaking. He might try to rug pull the markets. So just be very careful. So I'm anticipating that it is looking a little bit more bearish for the super short term like for tomorrow. For the next few days we might discuss some downside in the markets and for Nio. But don't you worry because when the new deliveries numbers come out going into next week, I think it's going to look very good as we're getting some very good numbers so far in terms of registrations. I think Nio has potential to get a very nice bounce anyways. As far as SPY goes, we're going to be watching these levels very carefully to discuss if this could break out. If we get a big pump because of Jerome Powell tomorrow, alongside all the earnings coming out, SPY make its way up to at least 458. That's a possibility. If we get bad news tomorrow, we're going to be testing the 50 MA at 454. If that fails us, we're going to make our way all the way down to much lower levels. So make sure you are prepared. We still have this unfilled gap down here in this like 452 area. We could come all the way down to 452 or lower if we get the rug pull from Powell. If we get a pump with Powell and all the catalysts coming out for Tesla, it's going to come all the way up to at least 275 to 278 around that area. If it fails to do so, it's going to come all the way down below 260 into the 250s again, possibly to some balance down here around 255, which would be bearish for Tesla. Last but not least for the triple Q, if we're bullish, we're going to be discuss this thing break all the way up to 382. If we're bearish tomorrow, it's going to come all the way down to 378, if not as low as 375. Now, unfortunately, like I said before, I can't really predict this. It depends on what Jerome Powell says and what the Fed's policies entail. So we have to be ready for that. We have to be prepared. As far as Nio goes, this thing is once again looking a little weak, and I think the odds do favor from a technical standpoint a revisit of 11.5 or even lower than that. It may pop in the morning from a right shoulder, then potentially come all the way back down, and then we might discuss it in the 11s very, very soon, which is completely fine, 11.5 or so. But then, like I said before, even if it does drop, this could be another good buying opportunity because next week you might discuss the very explosive move by Nio because in 1 week alone they did almost 5,000 deliveries. Just think about it. That's just based off their new registrations. So imagine for the entire month of July, they should be doing some pretty good numbers overall, well over 10,000. It should be, in my opinion, close to like 15,000 or so deliveries. The Ease to 6 is killing it, and I'm expecting Nio to explode next week, in my opinion. Once we get to August, and we're just a couple of days away, August 1, I'm very excited and very optimistic. All right, so that's my view for Nio. Maybe for the short term, there could be some downside because of Jerome Powell, the FOMC meeting some negative pressures from the markets. But for the medium term, gonna into like mid next week, by August 1, I expect and I'm anticipating a nice move by Nio. I think we're gonna get some good numbers, and Nio is gonna explode. That's my view in the most simple way I could put it. Thanks for watching our video on Nio Stock. If you enjoyed this content and want to stay updated on the latest investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Remember, Investing involves risks, so do your own research before making any financial decisions. Stay tuned for more exciting content and happy investing.